Oye, Mira, racism manifests itself all around the world completely different than what we understand it to be here in the United States. From colorism, classism, indigenous discrimination, indigenous marginalization, from the caste system in India to the aristocracy in the United Kingdom, to wealth disparities in Latin America, the legacy of apartheid in South Africa, colorism within the Latino community, internalized racism with African Americans in the United States, internalized racism and proximity to whiteness here in the United States by all BIPOC and visible minorities. The one thing they all have in common is that they're all tools of white supremacy. But when we're talking about racism in the southern United States, it itself is so different and so unique compared to anything else around the world. Yes, racism exists everywhere in so many different ways and all around the country, especially here in the United States, since we indeed were founded on the principles of racism. But when you truly experience it and have your real racial awakening as a person of color or visible minority in the South, everything changes. Now, I spent 25 years living in the South, the deep South, so I got to see racism in its truest form in so many multiple ways. Being raised in Los Angeles, Hollywood, then later moving to New Jersey and New York, we were raised around people who looked and sounded like us. And yes, discrimination was very prevalent, and we ourselves were very discriminatory to other people because we lived in a society that never held us accountable for shitty behavior. But as we get older, we learned better and we started doing better. Which is why when I moved to Georgia in 1996 and I got met with my first slur, I was taken aback. I had never fucking experienced that in my entire life. I got to understand really quickly the privilege that I had of never having to experience that as a person of color so directly as I did in the South. As I got older, it manifested in so many different ways. Getting rejected for bank loans, getting rejected for loans for housing, getting rejected for credit cards, getting denied jobs just because of my name. For those of you who don't know, I was in the hospitality industry for over 20 years as a server. And what a lot of people don't tell you is that the minimum wage for server pays, not only in the South but in red states, is $2.13 an hour. As a matter of fact, these are the states that still pay $2.13 an hour to their servers. Take it in. What many people don't teach you in the United States, tipping as a wage replacement became institutionalized after the Civil War, when newly freed slaves entered the labor market. In the aftermath of emancipation, most employers sought to avoid paying fair wages to black workers, adopting a Euro-style tipping pay system, where the customers, not the employers, determine the compensation. This is one form of systemic racism that continues today. This system allowed white employers to deny black people livable wages by just simply saying, they're receiving tips. Why should I pay them? The tipping system itself was used to maintain racial hierarchies here in the United States. And on June 25th, 1938, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed the Fair Labor Standards Act, the FLSA. And this was huge for its time because it's what established federal minimum wage, regulations on overtime pay, and restrictions on child labor. This was part of his Great New Deal, as he called it, during the Great Depression. States that continue to pay their servers $2.13 an hour are required to ensure their servers actually meet a $7.25 minimum wage. And if they don't, the employer has to make up the difference every pay period, which is probably every week or every 2 weeks. But here's the reality. They don't. And most servers don't even know how these laws really work. So whatever tips they make are whatever tips they make. And whatever little paycheck they get, it's whatever little paycheck they get. And if you're still asking at this point of the video, why do you bring race into it? Well, it's because like most states, like California, actually pay their servers a minimum wage, plus tips. Because those goddamn blue states don't know what they're doing, do they?